My name's not Sam Pang. I don't know where he is. Actually, don't know where he is. But he asked me to host, and I get to live every teenage boy's fantasy and be Sam Pang for the night. I've invited here two of my favourite people in Dave O'Neill and Kick Gurry. Dave O'Neill's going to be talking about 80s music, and Kick Gurry's going to be talking about gambling. I think that's a fantastic subject for an unexpected passion. And it is a passion. The first person I'm going to bring onto the stage is Dave O'Neill, though. And I know he's many people. Well, he's many things to many people. For me, he's the founding breakfast host of Nova. He's the guy who used to fill in for Tom Gleisner on the panel. Thought he was very good in that. He was the first person to satirise a security guard on Australian TV. I ripped him off a few years later in The Wedge. He's the guy who co-wrote Takeaway and You and Your Stupid Mate. I auditioned for both those films, didn't get a role, mercifully, as it turned out. And but most importantly to me, he was the guy who wrote a column in Beat magazine. It was a weekly column. I think it came out on a Wednesday, whenever Beat magazine comes out. And I didn't know anyone when I first came to Melbourne, and Dave's column really spoke to me, and it got me through some pretty lonely times. So I want to welcome him here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave O'Neill.
Adam, thanks for the lovely introduction.
Now,
Beat magazine, yeah, people still talk about that column occasionally. Yeah,
that's great.
I wrote it for several years.
How many years?
5 maybe.
And how many columns?
I don't know, every week. And I got paid $50 a column. So that's how much is $2,500? Is it? I'm not good at maths. Anyone good at maths?
$2,500 over 5 years.
Yeah, but you don't do it for the money.
No.
Well, obviously not. But I published a book out of that called Unfit for Life.
And so did you use all the columns in the book, or did you
basically
selected columns?
No, not all of them, but yeah, I put them into groupings like school and education, family, food, that kind of stuff. And
I remember you telling me once that you actually sent out the book to people who had inspired you comedically over the years.
Yeah, I sent a copy to, or I gave them to people, comedians that had helped me, and people like Dave Hughes, Kate Langwell, people I work with that had helped me on the book and stuff. Sean McAuliffe, and you'd sign it. Glenn Robbins, I gave one to, and I wrote, "Dear Glenn, thanks for all your help and stuff." And then 6 months later I found that in a St Kilda op shop, so that's I just told him that the other day. Adam was there when I told him, and it was quite, should have seen, he said he got burgled, so
that was his third excuse. He was workshopping excuses in front of Dave. It was interesting.
He gave it to Mum. He goes, I gave it to Mum, I got burgled.
And then backstage, "Man, I'm so sorry."
I'm like, it doesn't matter, who cares?
Well,
it's a sort of a toilet book, a bathroom book you read in the toilet and then give it away. I mean, I would have germs on it, but anyway.
Mate, it was such a good column, and I really enjoyed it. And I read it. There used to be this book called The Penguin Book of Journalism, and it said that you're not a columnist until you've actually written 100 columns.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I guess stand-up's the same. You probably need to get 100 gigs in
Yes, probably. You've had 100, or I've had thousands, but whatever. Yeah. I assume. Yeah.
What is it? A kind of thing you get really good and then you go down again, and then
yeah, it's true. Yeah, you go up and down in stand-up comedy. It just depends where you're doing, what you're doing.
Well, that obviously is a passion, but tonight we're going to be talking about 80s music.
It's more of a job now, stand-up.
Is it?
No, it's. I did 2 footy clubs a day in a row, so that's like a job.
And do you score yourself?
No, I used to, but not anymore. And I used to write down all the jokes that I'd done. Yeah. And I look at those notes now, I can't remember any of the jokes. So, because your jokes change as your life changes. But yeah, no, I don't score myself. No, not anymore.
Do people in the audience yell out, "Do the joke that you did in 1987"?
No, it's like being in a band. No, no one wants to hear your hits.
Well, that's the thing. I didn't think so, but we went and saw Anthony Morgan the other night. Your co-host in
Randling,
and but people were actually yelling him out to do hits, and he was struggling to remember.
That's because he can't remember anything.
No, it's true.
Because there's been a lot of that going on. But some comics they do. I think maybe Jamone, maybe. If you have like an iconic routine, maybe. I don't have any of those. So
I can name a few.
Yeah, good one.
So Now we're here to talk about 80s music.
80s music.
When did your love for 80s music start?
In the 80s. Well, it was interesting. I was thinking about this driving in, and I didn't have a far drive, but I thought about it a little bit. And I grew up in a house with three brothers. I've got a twin brother, Glenn, and he lives in Switzerland. He's a lot skinnier than me, so we keep him out of the country. Glenn, he doesn't even speak English anymore. He barely speaks English. But anyway, he works for the Red Cross anyway, Switzerland. But anyway, so there was me and him, and we shared a room, and there were my two older brothers, Trevor and Mark. And Trevor dominated the stereo with shit 70s music. Like, I mean, I don't mind it now, but then, so we had Frampton Alive, Pink Floyd, all those bad bands like UFO, Chicago, who I don't mind now, but back then we were like, oh, this music. And then punk started in the late 70s, and my middle brother Mark owned punk, right? Because it was aggressive, and he liked smashing things, and he was always shooting things and stuff. He was a classic middle child. He was a kid who he got in trouble. He went on the Central Australia trip in year 11 and put laxatives in the drama teacher's drink on an 8-hour bus trip or something like that. And then they went to the what's the mountain range near the Ayers Rock? It's I've never been there. It's not the Olgas. It's something like that. And he decided to make his own way back to the bus. So he got sent back from Central Australia by himself, and Dad had to go and pick him up from the airport. And the principal said, I think Mark just got in with the wrong crowd. And Mum said, what do you mean he is the wrong crowd? So anyway, Mark owned punk because that suited him, and so me and my twin brother, we owned 80s music, because then when we started getting the music, it was like, so 1980 was year 10 for us, 81 year 11, 82 year 12, and so that's when we really started to get into music, and we just loved it. Mum and Dad weren't really into music. They were working class. They just probably thought music was, I don't know, they owned about 4 records.
Right, okay. So your dad wasn't a Sinatra man or something like that?
No. He'd been to Vietnam and came back angry.
Yeah.
And he was angry anyway. So, but we didn't really like sport. We never really liked sport much. A few of my older brothers played, but we didn't, me and my twin especially, weren't very sporty. So we just loved music. So it was like a sport for us. We would get Juke magazine and Ram magazine, and we would look at the charts and stuff like that.
And you could recite the top 10?
Oh, I couldn't now, but I could back then. Yeah. We would go into Brashes and pick up the little. You remember the little chart with we go to Brashes in Eastland because I grew up near Ringwood, and all the Sharpies would spit on you, and it was great times. And we just loved music. We loved that music at that time. So we got into bands like we liked Oz Rock, so we liked Midnight Oil, Mental as Anything, In Excess, because they were all quite alternative back then too. They weren't mainstream. They went into the mainstream, but they started off quite alternative. And bands, then the English bands, we love ska music like Madness and Duran Duran, Depeche Mode, that kind of. Duran Duran was sort of girls' music, but we put up with that to meet girls. We bought the first album, and Spandau Ballet, which sort of fell into the same category. We still like them, and then later on the more depressive 80s, like the Smiths and bands like that. We loved the Smiths,
and then you took it further. You actually played in the band.
We formed a band. We actually formed a band in Scouts. So we. I was in Scouts till I was 26, which I do remember when I did Novi with Husey and Kate, and when there was ever a dull moment, Husey would always say, just tell us again on air how old were you when you left Scouts. That was his favourite story.
So you went to Venturers and
Rovers.
And Rovers,
My favourite story on Husey was that when his mum would cook a lamb roast, she wouldn't put it in the fridge, she used to put it in the cupboard, and they'd leave it in there for days. And he'd go, yeah, that's fine, isn't it? Who puts a lamb roast in the cupboard? It's very disturbing. Anyway, so I was in the Scouts till I was 26. He had lamb roast in his cupboard without refrigeration. So we were in Scouts, and there was 6 or 7 of us. Some of the guys went to the Catholic school, we went to the high school, and we all just decided to form a band again to meet girls. And our first gigs were at Scout halls, guide halls. Yep. We did a gig at the Croydon Guide Hall. We killed it.
Cover
it was
band.
Great. Started off covers, but we always did originals, and then pretty soon we just went all originals, man. Cover bands were considered,
of course,
bullshit, man.
Well, this is the whole situation about 80s music. I mean, there's that dichotomy. A lot of people think, the 80s bad taste, big hair, those big
Bon
hair
Jovi,
bands. So
Poison, all those bands.
Yeah.
Twisted Sister. We all hated those bands.
That's right. So let's talk about, the
cool 80s, man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Melbourne had some great. We
So
used to
it's suburbia versus St Kilda in many ways.
yeah, and a lot of the cool bands would start off in the inner city, like Shudo Echo were a very cool band when they started. Boomko Shopper, who the bass player went to Mitcham High, he was a few years above us, so he was like our inspiration, Richard Pleasance, right? Because Boomko Shopper were an inner city band, cool, and then they just went massive and became this massive. You remember Boomko Shopper? Hands Up in the Air, Great Wall.
Yeah.
Onion Skin. Yeah, they got some good songs. I'll sing them for you if you want, but I got no. Oh, Onion Skin. It's great music. And so they became, so a lot of things started in the city, but I mean, we were living in Mitcham, so we would get the train in and get the tram or walk to these venues, and then when it hit 11:30 we had to run to Flinders Street and get the last train back. And the last train, as some of you guys would remember, didn't matter whether you were living in Mitcham or Werribee or Broadmeadows, was fucking scary. The last train, like...
Did you ever miss it?
Yeah, we missed it occasionally.
And your dad had to come out and pick up?
Dad, no. We got a taxi, I think, one time. Or you get the tram to Mont Albert and walk. That was another one. Or hitchhike. We hitchhiked sometimes too. Yeah, used to hitchhike occasionally.
Because you could do that. Oh, you don't see hitchhikers these days. That's another thing.
No. I picked up a hitchhiker before I had children, so I had no responsibilities, and I was coming back from a gig, and I said, "Hey, you go, mate." He goes, "Oh, good. I just got out of prison." So you know what?
Yeah.
That's when I thought I got to stop picking up hitchhikers. I mean, I'm all for prison reform, but anyway. I can't remember what I was saying.
So we're talking about that kind of that scene. It was particularly in Melbourne in the 80s. I mean, Melbourne was pretty much the epicentre of music in Australian music.
Well, they all
in the
came
80s.
Down here, but there's still good bands in Brisbane and Sydney too, and even Perth. Turned out a lot of bands.
I guess Brisbane had the Saints and the Go-Betweens, and
ups and downs.
But they then missed out on that 80s, and they got into the 90s with Powderfinger, Regurgitator, and Custard.
Yeah.
But Melbourne, you always saw was that, especially in the 80s.
Yeah, the 80s.
With the birthday party, of course.
Birthday party were very cool. I mean, see, my older brother liked them. I didn't like them because they were a bit too, grungy sort of. We like Kids in the Kitchen,
Yeah, right.
More Kids in the Kitchen fans.
Scott Kahn,
man.
Oh, Kahn, sorry. Scott Kahn, who's he?
Scott Kahn, he's Carpenter.
Yeah, that's right.
We used to go see Kids in the Kitchen, Boom Crash Opera, because all these a lot of girls went to those gigs.
Yeah.
Not that we ever spoke to any of them, but anyway.
But that's the thing. You sometimes didn't care about the big band. It was the kind of,
the people there.
Attracted girls. Yeah.
We were more sort of for the band in a lot of ways. Yeah, and then we would occasionally go to a nightclub afterwards or something like that. Yeah. We all lived in a shared house with Guy, and then we would go out to a nightclub, but like an alternative nightclub, not like occasionally we go to Chasers or something like that. Great times. Get turned away, go get a hot dog, go home. What a great night. Go to Souvlaki maybe. It was all fun. And then we got into ska music too, which was very male dominated though. Yeah. So that ska music's like reggae music sped up. It was a Jamaican thing. They went to England. They had bands like Madness and the Specials, and then Australia had their own. Melbourne had their own bands, No Nonsense and Strange Tenants, and these bands. And we used to love them because ska it's like Cat Empire now. They're a bit scarish. Every 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, they love that music we can jump up and down to.
Yeah,
Tism were like that too. They just attracted young men.
That's right.
And so it was just get rid of your energy, run around a bit.
And being a comedian, was there any appeal for humour in songs, in lyrics?
Yeah, I liked songs that were funny. You're right. I like Mental as Anything. Ska music was quite funny. Yeah, you're right. I did like a bit of humour in the songs. And occasionally you would see a comedian doing, because there were no sort of comedy venues, and that you would do. Slim Whittle used to do a character called the Midnight Oil Roadie. And he'd turn up, because Midnight Oil were famous hardcore rock and roll band. They were the hardest, tough guys, and their roadies were even more famous as being tough guys. And so Slim Whittle, he was a comedian in the 70s and 80s. He would turn up with like a foldback speaker like this on his arm with oils written on, and he had like the black singlet and the black pants, and he'd just walk in and go, "Oh fuck, we're not playing this shit hole, no fucking way, man." And so he'd pretend he was setting up for the oils. It was very, very funny, but very gutsy to do comedy. Now that I'm a stand-up comedian in between bands, that's hard.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's hard. But
I mean, particularly, obviously strippers are the worst.
Yeah,
doing
that's hard.
comedy before strippers.
I've never done that, but thank God that's gone out of.
That would be a tough gig, because that they're going to be entertaining the crowd more than you are, possibly.
Of course.
So let's. I used to have this kind of theory as a journalist that it was always difficult to meet your heroes.
Yeah.
And
it's always a letdown.
Of course, and also if you didn't get on well with them, then that colours your perception of them forevermore. So with obviously when you're on Specs and Specs, you met a lot of these guys.
I met a lot of them. Before I did Specs and the Specs, I got a phone call once, and this guy goes, "Oh, g'day, it's Scott Kahn here from some booking agency. I book bands down on the peninsula. I just wanted to get you to do this gig." And I went, "Oh yeah, what's your name again, mate?" He goes, "Scott Kahn." I go, "Oh, I like that guy in Kids in the Kitchen." He goes, "Yeah, that's me." I'm like, "What?" Because I used to love Kids in the... You're Scott Kahn? Are you serious? And so, yeah, because he was the lead singer of Kids in the Kitchen. They had a hit with Change in Mood. You might remember them. Anyway, Bit of Desire.
Bit before my time.
Anyway, they were big for a while, and I loved them. And so when I met him, so he came to the gig. I did a gig down in the Peninsula for him. He came to the gig, and he was a very skinny, good-looking young guy in his day.
Yeah.
Some of the people might remember Scott Kahn. But when he came to the gig, he was like... someone got a bicycle pump, and he was fatter than me, and it was like... I go, "Whoa, Scott, you've changed." He goes, "Yeah, change in food." That's what he said. Not so much change in mood. But I've got his number in my phone, still on my mobile, and it rang the other day in the fruit shop, and I held up to the guy in the fruit shop. "Look who's ringing me, mate." And he went, "Scott Kahn, Kids in the Kitchen, wow." See, it's the same thing. I've got Tony Shaw's number from Collingwood, because he does sort of speaking, just not stand up, but he does footy club gigs, and I do them. And he occasionally gets me to do one with him. And that impresses my dad, who's a tragic Collingwood supporter. But I'm not impressed by that. But Scott Kahn, I'm impressed by that.
So your phone is a liability. If you lost it, some people would be pretty
some
upset.
Serious people in there.
Yeah.
No, not really.
So Specs and Specs. What about some of the?
Yeah, that was great, because you did get to meet, and they would say, "Oh, we've got Suggs from Madness coming up. Oh, please," I'd say, "Put me on with it. Oh, I love Madness." But I got to sit next to Lloyd Cole from Lloyd Cole and the Commotions, and they had a hit with Lost Weekend and that Rattlesnakes album, which was a fantastic record in the 80s. And I freaked him out a little bit, it's fair to say, because by memory he was squashed between me and Alan Bro, and we were freaking him out with our love for him. He's like, because he's sort of a shy, sort of quiet guy. And I told this story when he played here. He played at the concert hall, and my brother and my friends, we waited backstage, like near this backstage door, and we saw him come out and get into a car, and we followed him, and and he went to Chasers, and so we went to Chasers, we went in, and then we sort of, he's there with some girl, some bitch, anyway, whatever, and he said he didn't marry her. That was his girlfriend at the time, he told me on the show, and then he got up and danced to Prince's Raspberry Beret, and we all got up and danced next to him. It's tragic when you think about it now, but we're too scared to talk to him, of course. So but he was a lovely guy. He was he's a very good golfer. He's number 2 on the celebrity golf thing. He was telling me.
What is the thing? The editor of this paper I used to work for, his parents lived in Byron Bay, and they were lawn bowlers.
Yeah.
And he went up to Byron Bay, and he went up to see his dad, who was playing lawn bowls, and he saw this guy, kind of at the time, a kind of 50-something guy with long hair, but with a kind of a sloppy hat on, all in whites, bowling. Turned out to be Robert Plant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Robert Plant's a bowler.
In Byron Bay, yeah.
Interesting. And who else did I meet? You meet, some of the Australian, like Steve Kilby from The Church. I used to love The Church. He was quite funny. Some of them were quite unusual. Like, they're very, like Martin Plaza from Mental Anything. I sat next to him, and bands that I used to really like. And like Chris Bailey from The Saints. How was that? Yeah, well, he's an interesting character.
Kind of supercilious and
a bit prickly. Because I used to go on Specs and Specs so often, they used to put me next to the difficult people.
Yeah, right.
Dave will warm them up, Yeah. And then they go to me before, "Go talk to him in his dressing room. Go talk to him. Hello, Mr. Bailey. Love your music." And
what the fuck do you want?
Yeah, and I actually, one of the scariest guys I sat next to was you would have acted with him. Great legend from Crackerjack, and I can't remember his name. Bill Hunter.
Yeah.
Bill. And so Bill was standing in the green, because he's quite scary. He's quite gruff and stuff. And they did a movie special or something, and I was on his team, and I said, so standing over there, I went, hey, Bill, so we're going to try and win tonight? He goes, "Get fucked." I was really scared. I couldn't work out whether it was his character or what was going on. He was quite scary, Bill Hunter.
It's true. That's what he's like.
But Chris Bailey was also scary. So Chris Bailey was a legend. He was in the Saints, which were like an iconic punk sort of post-punk band. They basically started punk, they reckon, when you trace it back to, the Sex Pistols said they used to listen to Chris Bailey. Yeah. And so anyway, he lives in a boat in Amsterdam or something like that. And so he's like, I was on a team with Miff, and he's just like, you could tell he was just not into it. And,
did they fly him out, or did they?
He was touring with Ed Cooper, who was in the Saints, and he said, "Oh God, he's a miserable bastard." And I thought, Jesus, those two together must be fun. Oh, jeez. And so anyway, the question was, it was at the end of the show, one of the end of the show. What was the name of the Village People musical? And I go, oh, Miff, what was it? You Can't Stop the Music. And me and Miff started singing, Nobody Can Stop the Music. And I said to Chris Bailey, you can probably stop the music. And he said, I will, and I will. No, he said, I can and I will. So he's kind of scary.
So he's not in your mobile phone?
He's not in the mobile phone.
So
I got Lloyd Cole's, he gave me his home number though, so...
Wow.
Yeah, I've never rung it. My wife said, mate, let's go on holiday now and visit him, just to see, interesting to see where he lives. But I can imagine ringing up his home and his wife answering it and just going, sorry, who's this?
Yeah.
Who's this?
You wonder those relationships actually can sustain past the show.
Yeah, so, I don't reckon you remember me.
So with
Lloyd.
Nova and Vega and obviously Triple R before that, you would have interviewed thousands of people.
Tons.
Again, some good ones and bad ones. And particularly... Did you meet any heroes or villains of 80s music that you...
Yeah, there was stacks. Some of them are disappointing. Cyndi Lauper was, you'd think, she'll be awesome, but she had the biggest entourage. She had like about 13 people with her. So she was a bit intimidating. Whereas Jermaine Jackson, he turned up by himself. Like he caught the bus brilliant. There. Yeah. Which is kind of weird. But what would happen with the really big stars is that they'd send you to a hotel room. They'd send me and Hughes, because Kate would always say, I can't be bothered, you two go do it. So, and then eventually it was just me going. And you'd sit in a line with other people from other, you would have done those interviews. In newspaper, and you go in and they go, you've got 5 minutes with, Matt Damon or whoever. And I'm trying to think of the music people. We interviewed Duran Duran. They were great. See, the 80s guys now are great because they're all in their 40s and 50s. And they've
kind of gained a sense of humour.
They have.
What happened. Yeah.
And I said to them, why? Because they fought a lot. Duran Duran fought a lot. Like Spannable, they took each other to court. You know what I mean? Everyone took each other to court to get money.
True.
And I said to Duran Duran, why are you guys back together? And John, the guitarist, said, I've got 4 kids. He's got 3 kids. He's got 2. He's got 5. We just want to get out of the house, mate. So they just wanted to get out of the house.
Chris Rock, when he gets in a fight with his wife, books another gig.
Yeah,
that just doesn't go home.
I believe that. Yeah. I believe that. I'll tell you what, the worst interview though we ever did was me and Hughesy were sent to interview Anthony Hopkins, the Silence of the Lambs, and I missed the briefing. Okay, I was a little bit late, and apparently they said don't mention his alcoholism because he'd fallen off the wagon that week or whatever, and don't mention his wife. And I managed to put both of those in the first question, so he cancelled all his interviews after us.
What did he say to you?
Hey?
Did he say anything to you?
No, I just said, what's your wife think about your drinking? I think that's what the first... And he's just like staring at me, and then Hughes went, my girlfriend thinks you're sexy. He went, oh yeah, okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, well, so Hughes did a save. Are your tastes stuck in the 80s, or do you like any of today's music?
I loved it. Yeah, no, I still buy CDs and stuff. I was trying to think. What I bought the Killers. I love the Killers who are touring for the big day out.
Yep.
But they sound like an 80s band. They sound a bit Duran sort of ish. And then I love. At the moment, the National, which is an American, they sound to me like Joy Division, or again they sound a bit 80s to me.
So is that kind of
more serious 80s,
right?
Smiths sort of 80s, and then the Killers are more fun sort of 80s.
What do you think of the movies that have been made of 80s bands like 24 Hour Party People?
Well, that was pretty good.
Joy Division and
the Joy Division one was great.
So do you is it? That tap into your sentiment?
Oh yeah. I'd love to write a book. I've been trying to work on a book about the 80s, but I've got to get off my ass anyway. I've got 3 small children. That's my excuse for everything. I love that show. This Is England, which was on SBS.
Yep.
And it was a movie too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And And that was because I used to watch that because that was all about ska music
Punk.
and skinheads and punks and stuff.
Yeah.
But then there was murder and stuff, and I'm like this up until that point, everything happened in Mitcham, but that bit didn't. So I would love to do something similar to that. That's not, no one got stabbed in Mitcham that I remember anyway, or there was no incest, for example, that I could remember. But that happened in that film. It was quite disturbing.
Yeah,
the ending was full on.
This is England.
Yeah, this is England.
Amazing
86.
Film. Yeah, absolutely.
There was a film, then there was a series. Yeah.
Right, so I never saw the series, I saw the film, and very moving. Well, Dave, thank you so much.
Norris.
We'll move on to Kick now, and we'll go from 80s music to gambling. So I used to think that Kick Gurry would be too cool to be friends with me. Turned out he was. He's the we met on the series of the Australian television drama Tangle, and I'd always seen photos of him in magazines, and he's always looking very cool and everything. It turned out he's a very funny man. I enjoyed his performance and loved his performance in Looking for Love Brandy. He's also in Tangle, Offspring. I cast him in Agony Uncles. He's a friend and lover to the rich and famous. One of the funniest people I know. Please make welcome Kick Gurry.
Bit worried there for a minute.
Sorry.
What were you doing?
Oh, it's a little lonely back there. I got a little hopped up on Sprite and red wine.
Yeah, that's right.
Sort of itch. I feel like David Brent getting ready to come out. And
It's they're a lovely crowd, mate.
by the way, I was watching the thing when I first went to Los Angeles for the first time, and I was sort of I landed there, went to the hotel, had a nap. This was in 2000. And I had rented a car. I went for a drive, and I stopped at a red light. First red light, looked to my left, and there was a blue Mercedes with gold rims and everything, and this flowing blonde hair, and it was David Lee Roth.
Wow, yeah.
And I sort of looked at him and went, that's pretty cool. First person I see in Hollywood is David Lee Roth. And then suddenly I heard from his car, dun, 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 dun. And I started thinking, that must be from my car. I looked down, turned my thing down, then looked, and he looked across at me, and I sort of looked at him quizzically as if, are you listening to Van Halen? Like, I kind of went, and he went, he knew exactly what I was, and then he just, he drove off.
Living the dream, man.
I thought, yeah, here I am. I've arrived.
I love that. The first person I saw when I moved to Melbourne was Tex Perkins.
It's pretty cool.
Walking down Grey Street. Look worse for wear. Yeah.
Did he ask you for money? No.
Yeah, he asked me for $5. So gambling. We're going to talk to Kick about gambling. His passion is gambling, and amongst other passions, mate. Firstly, when did you start gambling?
I went to my grandparents were keen on the horses,
right?
So I used to go with my grandmother to the track, and I went with my old man and my grandmother. I think when I was 6 to Flemington.
The GGs, you would have called it.
And I backed a horse called Rom Stiletto, which was 25 to 1 in the Oaks. And my dad always laughs because everyone laughed. Even the bookie laughed when I went up to put the money on, which is kind of funny now that they've let a 6-year-old put a bet on. But maybe that's why he was laughing. But it won. So
your first bet?
Yeah, first bet. I think
and that's what
$1 on Rom Stiletto. And
$25. What year would have that been?
82. Something like that.
I said good money back then.
Yeah, there's a lot. Well, I mean, I was 6, so
put it through.
About 10 Transformers.
I was going to relate to that. My grandmother was a big gambler, and she took me to Randwick at a similar age, but she wanted to save the money, that the entrance fee to getting into the race course to bet, and so she boosted me up to get over the fence
you
into Randwick, and I bet on. I probably was 6 or 7, and I had I think $10 on Just a Dash and $10 on Kingston Town, both Malcolm Johnson horses, ridden horses. So. Well,
my brother actually, we have a funny story where we were at the track. It was the last race of the day. We'd all lost all our money. There's a bunch of us, a couple of my brother's buddies and myself that go, and I like this horse in the last race called Lucky Striker, and it was 125 to 1. And I had $10 left, my brother's mate Nick had $5 left, and my brother had a $2 coin, and we all went up to the window and we said, fuck it, we'll back this thing 125 to 1. So I put the $10 on. My brother's mate put his 5 on, and my brother stood at the window. My brother's passion is food more than horses. And he looked and he thought, I'm going to save $1 to get a Mr. Whippy. On the van on the way out.
Oh my God.
So he actually said, can I have $1 the win, and got the $1 change, and the horse lucky struck a 1.
Wow.
So it was $125 Mr. Whippy. So
and what did you have on it?
Well, $10, and it ended up, $1,250. So
how old were you?
It went from a terrible day to a great day.
So you mentioned your grandparents before. So with the gambling running in the family, it does run in the family, I guess.
Definitely runs in the family.
Is it a genetic thing, or is it a kind of a learned thing?
I don't know. I think most gamblers probably try their best to analyse their own gambling habits as little as they can, because it's probably pretty depressing after you think about it for a while. But it was the last thing my grandfather actually ever said. He was walking out of his home down in... Don't make a joke.
No, I'm not. No, it sounds like a joke. I'm just interested.
He was walking out of his house down in Mornington with my uncle, and he turned to my uncle and said, I've got a bird for you tomorrow, which in his language meant I've got a horse that will definitely win. And my uncle looked at him, and then my grandfather fell against the wall, had a heart attack and died.
Gee.
And don't laugh.
And we never knew.
No, we never knew. So that's kind of a bit of a commentary on how gambling works, where there's always that moment of, oh God, we've always wondered what it was, what the horse was. I think my uncles even were scouring the form, grief-stricken, but going, which one was it? Did he circle one?
But what about your dad? Your dad was also, he was particularly into the horses, wasn't he?
Yeah, Dad's still very much into the horses. I think there's a thrill. My dad was a real, grew up in Coburg, working class, Catholic boy, and I think in those days the thrill of the track, which is still there a little bit, but in those days you couldn't bet on anything or anywhere other than at the track. So, probably gambling attracts a sort of a dodgy crowd a little bit. Yeah. So you had one place where everyone that was a little bit dodgy went to. And so there's this sort of thrill of excitement, and it's still there a little bit. You sort of sense when you're there that, I said to someone that I thought the North Melbourne-Richmond game last Sunday was a fix.
Yeah.
I thought there were too many umpiring decisions that seemed odd in the same game for it not to be slightly fixed, and everyone laughed at me and said that's ridiculous. But if you say a horse race is fixed, no one will laugh at you.
Yeah.
They'll go, every race is fixed.
Yeah.
So it's the last sort of old school thing where you think there's still some kind of...
There's great honour among gamblers, isn't there? At the track, particularly. They dress so well. A lot of them, they wear the hats and the nice suits, and
I guess,
and they look after each other.
No, I don't. No, I wouldn't say. I actually disagree. I think if someone actually passed out of the track and their wallet was showing, I think probably 90% of people would take the wallet.
Yeah, right. Your dad had an interesting way of actually inspiring jockeys. We're allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, I think it's legal.
Okay.
But in horse racing, there's some... obviously, there's big races, and the theory is that it's very hard to corrupt a jockey, either financially or even just if they're not concentrating in a big race, because it means a lot to them. But if it's a smaller race and it doesn't mean a lot to the jockey to win or lose, sometimes you do watch a lot of races, you think, they weren't quite concentrating. So my dad used to offer them a bit of money he owned a few horses, to win the race. Obviously, to lose the race would be illegal, but all he's really doing is saying, if you win, we're going to win some prize money. And you have to give them a cut anyway. He was just saying, I'll give you a bigger cut.
Really? That's illegal, I think.
What? Do you think it's illegal?
I would assume so.
Is my dad going to get is this taped? Is my dad going to get...
I guess legal now.
It wasn't my dad. This was someone else, actually.
I would assume.
When I say my dad,
what happens to the
that's his nickname.
Yeah.
He used it, but it was small. I mean, it was big amounts, but not astronomical amounts. But he offered a jockey once. He wanted to. I went to the track with my uncle, and he rang us in the car. And he said to my uncle, "Can you tell the jockey before the race that I'll give him $2,000 if he wins?" And so we were late getting in there and didn't get to speak to the jockey, and the horse ended up winning the race, irrespective of my dad's influence. And as we're talking to the jockey after the race, my uncle, brilliant mathematician, said, "Oh, by the way, my brother said he's got $2,000 for you for winning the race." And I was like, I think he meant, I think he would have. So my dad then had to go to this jockey's house and give him. The jockey was looking at my uncle as if, are these guys serious? Yeah. Anyway, so he had to go on the Saturday morning, actually, it was the Derby morning, and give the jockey a check, and the jockey was looking at him pretty strangely, but
he wanted cash. That's why.
I think he thought
this is definitely illegal.
This was not my dad, by the way.
This is the uncle.
But I think he felt sorry for my dad that he'd done that, and he gave my dad a tip on the horse he was riding in the Derby, and he won the Derby that day on a horse called Portland Player. So it ended up quite a good, and that's the lure of gambling, though.
Yeah,
which I get fascinated by is some people, see red lights in life, and some people see green lights when they're driving. The gambler sees a red light and a green light as a means to something else.
Yeah.
So bad luck, you can think, I can't believe that happened, but it actually may lead you to a big win.
Yeah.
So
what do you say? You talked about before when I actually mentioned the idea of doing this tonight. I said, what's the appeal? And you said it's something about predicting the future.
Yeah.
And that's quite a powerful kind of.
That's how I'm always fascinated by. I was always fascinated by numbers at school, but I wasn't a hard enough worker to succeed at maths or science, or maybe I was just a bit stupid. But I always was fascinated by the numbers. Like I've always been interested in this. And if I say to someone in the audience, one of us has $1,000 in our pocket, and you can have it if you guess who it is. They've got a 1 in 3 chance of guessing, right?
Yeah.
But if I then, and so let's say they choose me. If I then say, I'll give you an extra bit of information, it's not Dave, they're actually better off changing their pick to Adam, because at that point they have a 1 in 2 chance when they pick Adam, but when they picked me, they had a 1 in 3 chance. So you're more likely to be that person. They would, mathematics numbers would say
odds, is it?
You should change.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
It's more likely. So that was always a fascination of mine, and because I don't quite understand how that makes any sense. Because once you get to me, it's 1 in 2.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So it's something you're good at. So have you used it to impress women?
Gambling's an interesting one because, I remember the actual. It was 1995. I was just out of school, and it was Derby Day, and I took a girl that I just met into the grandstand. So let's go watch a couple of races, and I pretended to her that I had the inside knowledge on 2 horses, one called Octagonal and one called Nothing Like a Dane, that were paying $1.80. Both of them. I don't know if you remember those 2 horses.
I remember. Yeah.
They were definitely going to finish first and second. Like there was no way they weren't. But I didn't really tell her how obvious it was that they were going to. So I said, I think we should go these 2 to finish first and second in a Quinella. So of course they win by 10. They come first and second by 10 lengths. She's in the grandstand giving me these hugs. Unbelievable! And I was going, genius. Can you believe it? What? Anyway, we walk out of the grandstand, and then we were walking past. She saw a couple of her friends. But unluckily, there was a huge group of people that I see at the track every week, and they were saying there, and this girl really loudly saw her friends and went, "We got the Quinella! We got the Quinella!" And was going crazy, and I was looking at these guys, and they were just like...
But
a bit shameless. But
there's a few things that you actually done long odds on. We were talking the other day about your dream. A dream that you had. Yeah, I woke up. I was actually shooting a movie in Berlin, and the British Open golf was about to start. And I woke up at 3 a.m. in Berlin, and I just had a dream that Padraig Harrington had won the British Open. And at this point... Irish golfer.
Yeah, Irish golfer. At this point, he hadn't won a major tournament in his whole life. He was a bit of a journeyman golfer. But I had this actual vision in my head. I woke up and I could see him holding the trophy. But I thought, how am I going to get a bet on? It's 3 a.m. here. So I texted my dad and said, if you're driving past a TAB, I just had a dream that Paddy Harrington won the British Open, my dad happened to be driving down Williams Road, and he drove into the Bush Inn, and he put a bet on Paddy for myself and him, and he was $81, 80 to 1 to win the tournament. And then I went to see a terrible Nick Cage movie in Berlin. We had the day off on the last day of the tournament on the Sunday with the cast of the movie, who were all famous movie stars. We went to see this movie called Next, which was a shocking Nick Cage movie, which ironically was about predicting the future. And he was 6 shots back with 9 holes to play, and so I was going to go and watch it, and I thought, he's not going to win. And then I looked at my phone about halfway through the movie, and there was a text from my brother saying Paddy just went eagle, birdie, birdie, and the leader had bogeyed, so he's 1 shot back. So I just walked out of the Cage movie and found a sports bar in Berlin, an Irish pub, and they were playing the golf, and sat there and watched Paddy, and he won and held up the trophy. So,
and then he won the next year.
Yeah, I didn't back him the next year, which was a bit stupid. But
and did you have any money on anyone else?
I didn't have money on him, but I actually I picked him I'm in this competition where you pick one golfer every week for the whole year, but once you pick them, you can't pick them again. And I had Ernie in the British Open that week, so I think I was the only. I felt really bad, but I was the only Australian that went out and missed the putt. I was like, ugh.
Oh,
but then I felt terrible.
So, who has has this kind of love of gambling rubbed off on any of your friends, girlfriends, anyone like that? Because you have an extreme passion for it. Is it contagious?
Yeah, I think it's rather infectious more than contagious,
right.
But
destructive? Is it destructive?
Same thing.
Yeah, no, I keep hearing myself talk. The microphone sort of echoes in your head a little bit. When I say it, I think these things, they don't sound bad, but as I say them, I think I sound like a commercial for.
Yeah.
I was actually once in a TAB by myself during the week, and the gamblers.
And that's not a glamorous place.
No.
Since they've banned smoking, it just smells of BO. Doesn't it? The TAB.
I do think it's ironic that they ban things like smoking, but I can lose all my money and ruin my entire life, but at least I'm not smoking. But there was an ad came on for Gamblers Anonymous, and I was sitting there, and it said, the ad came on the 927 radio, and I was sitting there, and it said, "Do you gamble alone?" And I actually did think, is this in my head? I was the only one in the theatre. Do you gamble alone? And then it said, "Do you gamble when you don't enjoy it?" And I thought, that's probably, I'd enjoy it. But
how much money a week do you spend on gambling?
Oh, it varies. I don't gamble all the time. The way I view gambling really at the end of the day is, and I think a successful gambler is someone who understands that they will lose. That you lose. If you gamble, you lose. Yeah. There's a lot of gamblers out there who'll tell you they win, and I have these funny conversations with people. They're like, "Oh no, I'm definitely up." And I think, "Mate, you are."
It just goes like that, doesn't it? It just sort of go up, and go down,
like that, probably. But I think if you I look at it like a golf membership, or something that costs a certain amount to have as a hobby. That's how I view it. So I don't bet. The third question in the Gamblers Anonymous ad was, "Do you bet more than you can afford?" And to me, that was the key one, where I actually started smiling, and then looked at the guy behind the counter, and he was like.
Who you probably knew by name.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Gary. Gary's like,
how are the kids, Gary?
Yeah. And so yeah, I think that's the key. Is to, if you realise you won't win, but if you realise that winning at gambling is actually it's the putting money on Paddy Harrington. And thinking you have this dream, you saw the future, and the joy you get out of that is the win, not the money you win. The money just pays for all the losses you've had.
Your dad's obviously maintained he owns houses and stuff, so he's never gone that bad that it's
but people that I met at the track with my old man, I've seen, in the last few years who've lost everything. Lost home. I mean, it is a drug.
I've heard Schwartz, the Ox from Melbourne. David Schwartz he gives a talk at clubs and stuff about his gambling. It's amazing.
The sporting one is really dangerous. The horse racing one, I think it's understood that it's very hard to predict who'll win the race. Whereas I think sports betting, and I know this from my own experience, you do get the feeling that it's impossible that it won't happen. You get that feeling of, well, of course that team is going to win. There's no way the Gold Coast are going to beat Richmond. They're just not. and then
it
they
happens.
do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sports betting has that weird. You do sense, and I firmly believe, and I'm a big supporter of gambling, is that
Obviously.
the gambling advertising in Australia is just. I can't believe how ridiculous it is. It just
because they've already got you. So
yeah,
they don't need to. They're
it's
trying
so
to get new people.
it is.
They must be trying to get new
It's
people.
kids talk about football now as like,
Yeah.
Hawthorn are $1.30, and
Yeah,
you know,
right.
I mean,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
fact that you're watching a game and they're telling you the odds while you're watching it. To me,
it's insidious,
it's really it should be just banned. Any responsible government looking after its own society would say this is terrible, and the pokey venues, I mean, all that stuff. You know, I like to go to the track, and there's an element of class about it. You actually see happy people there. People are dressed up. You walk
That's
into
what I was saying before, and
it.
you shouted me down.
Well, you said there was honour in it.
Class.
Yeah, there's none of that in
Honour?
pokey. You
No.
go to a pokies venue at 3 a.m. There's only one type of person.
Well, you go to
there.
3 in the afternoon. Anytime, if
Yeah.
you just walk in there for a piss when you're in the TAB, you just
Right.
think, whoa.
So is there a class system
I'm not
among
the only
gamblers?
one in here.
Is there a class system among gamblers? Is it like, you know, is there a hierarchy? Like poker's obviously at the bottom.
Oh, amongst the actual sport, the actual
Yeah,
forms
yeah.
of gambling, pokey's definitely he's at the bottom. It's funny, dogs. Gambling
Yeah,
on
dogs always. I've
gambling
been the dogs. Yeah.
and you know the pretend races. I don't know if anyone's been into a pub, but there's pretend races on the screen,
Yeah, I've seen
the
them.
computer
Yeah,
ones.
yeah.
And I actually sit there, and a friend of mine laughed at me because he didn't laugh at me when I was betting on the horse version of the pretend race, but I was betting on the dog. A dog one came up, and he goes, "Oh, you're betting on the dogs."
The dog.
I was like, "It's all pretend," but that was actually lower. As a
Dogs have
form.
always been considered a little bit lower than horses. It's even more working class. Dogs.
Yeah.
Doggies.
My friend actually told me last week he
Yeah.
went to Harold Park, I mean the famous
Yeah. In
harness in
Sydney.
Sydney, and
Yeah.
the dogs. And he went there and he said, "What's the attendance?" And the guy at the door said, 17.
Oh, God.
That was their last
Well,
night.
there's a
They
track
closed.
I've been to the one in Broadmeadows, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's a
But
harness racing.
speaking of the
No, it's
hierarchy,
dogs.
the
It's
the thing I love, I play a bit of poker. I haven't for a year or so, but I used to play quite a lot. And the thing I love about poker is the tournaments is you get a certain amount of chips, which are all valued the same at the start of the poker tournament. So it doesn't matter if you have $10 in your pocket or you have $6 billion, you're on equal footing. You have the
Yeah,
same
right.
amount of chips. They're worth the same as you sit down at the start of that
There's
tournament.
skill in poker, though, isn't there? There's a bit of
Yeah.
skill in poker.
What's your
I think it's just
speciality?
luck.
What's your as far as all betting's concerned? What have you had most success at?
Probably horse racing, yeah.
Okay, and how many bets a week?
Oh, it sort of depends. I mean, like, in the last week I was in Sydney for the week. I didn't even have a bet.
But you got 3 text messages when we were having lunch the other day.
Yeah, that was the week before,
at,
wasn't it?
Whenever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a horse running in Darwin. Darwin's a bit like one of those.
When you know what's going on at Darwin, you got a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, you know, yeah.
Well, I used to say, if you're in Melbourne, if you know what's going on at Eagle Farm,
Yeah.
it's but have you ever thought to yourself, oh, this could be I'm
I
tutoring?
did once. I thought, well, it wasn't. I'm the thing for me that's always been easy is the amount. I never bet a lot. A lot meaning a lot of bets, yes, but never a big amount. I've never lost it. I once lost a bet where it stung. But it was because I played in this $6 online poker tournament, and I was for 12 hours. I went through like all these satellites, and I just
Yeah,
kept sort of winning and coming top 5, and I just kept progressing. And suddenly I was in this gigantic poker tournament, but I only paid $6. Anyway, I ended up coming third. It took 12 hours. I was just online all day, and I ended up coming third, and I won. I think I won $1,200 or something, and I was online, and I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I just want to feel what it's like to be in the $1,000 room where you buy in for $1,000. I'm just going to feel what it's like. And in poker, you can sit out. You don't have to buy in. You just sit out hands. So I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get in. I'm just going to sit there for one round of hands, and then I'm just going to get out, and I'll just feel what it's like. See if I get nervous. Just see what it's like, because it's a lot of money. Anyway, I bought in. It was like 1,000. I went, oh. And then the first hand I got, I don't know if people understand poker, the first hand I got was king, which is the second best hand you can get. And I went, oh, why can't it just be 2-7? But I went, I think I'll just play this one hand. And so I bet, they all bet 50, and I put up to 200, and one guy bet. And then the 3 cards came out, and it was a 2, a 5, and a 9, all different colours. And with Kings, you just think, I'm home here. And one guy just goes, all in, $5,000. And I was like, oh. And I just thought, I've got to do it. And he had 2 5s, so he then had 3 5s. But it happened in 20 seconds. And that's the one time, it actually taught me a lot about my own feelings about gambling, because it was the one time where it really hurt. Like when you lose more than you win. But that one I went, whoa, that's $1,000 just in 20 seconds. It was just on a computer as well. I was like, well, let's fold that up.
Never happened. Anyway, what's for lunch?
I almost went, and then I went like, did that really? Let's just check. Yeah, that happens.
And then did you listen to the Smiths? I'm trying to do a segue. What's your favourite 80s band, by the way?
Oh, it's funny because the bands you were mentioning that you hated, they're Bon Jovi and Slippery When Wet. I mean, Bad Medicine.
You probably saw,
that could be an age thing.
You were younger than me, so
still am. That's actually always.
Yeah, it's true. We were right in the middle of all that music when you hated it back then.
I loved the 80s. I loved 80s music because I felt like it told a story, whereas now I feel like pop songs now. Don't aim very high. It's just it's just about a single thing.
Johnny used to work on the docks.
Go, I'm so hungover. It's just about one thing. I'm tired. Whereas those songs were great themes.
Stories.
What were you saying the other day about 80s
Bonnie
lyrics?
Tyler?
Yeah,
I thought of Bonnie Tyler, famous Bonnie Tyler song, I'm holding out for a hero.
I'm holding out for a hero.
I feel like that's really unfair what she's saying. She's saying, I'm looking for a hero, right? He's got to be strong. He's got to be fast. He has to be fresh from the fight. So it's like, why? This is high demand.
Her poor husband.
It's like, I'm fast and strong. You just been in a fight? No, get out of here. But then, if you are strong, fast, and you're fresh from a fight, bruised and battered, you've been in a massive fight, and you go, oh, beauty, here I am, Bonnie Tyler. She goes, I said I'd only wait till morning. She won't even wait.
What if she's married?
She says, I'll wait till the end of the night. I'm holding out for a hero, but just till the end of the night. That's it.
You can imagine her fighting with her husband and the husband just ending the thing. Yeah, that's right. You're fucking holding out for a hero. Whatever. I'll go get the kids. All right, off we go. Is it time for questions? Is there questions?
Well, we're gonna. I was just gonna. I've got one last question. Have you ever betted? What's your gambling?
My parents are big gamblers. Granddad worked for an SP bookie. Big, they love the track and stuff. But I never really got the bug. You know what I mean?
Have you won a Melbourne Cup?
I've been to the Melbourne Cup.
Has he won a Melbourne Cup?
No, but has he won a Melbourne Cup?
No.
Never had a bet.
I've had a bet on the Melbourne Cup.
Surely bet Maccabi Diva. Everyone bet Maccabi Diva.
I can't remember.
Hyperno, mate, was
Hyperno.
First bet I ever had. One came in Melbourne Cup.
But my parents would be, Mum grew up in Richmond and they next to a pub, and Granddad used to work for the SP bookie, handing the stuff over the back fence when the cops would turn up.
Everyone that grew up in Richmond did something dodgy. That generation above.
Granddad was a wharfie.
Next to a pub.
Granddad was a wharfie, and he was great. So you'd go over there as like 5-6 years ago. So you guys want anything? Got some silk stockings? Great. We're 8. What were we then? And he said they used to get a bus from the Williamstown docks to the train station, and they had all of their bags, and the cops would get in and go, okay, it's a raid, and they'd all just kick their bags out in the aisle like that. And the cops would go, whose is this? I don't know. It's so dodgy.
Questions? Anyone have any questions for these fine gentlemen?
Nothing. No, that's fair enough.
I know we've covered a lot.
We need a bird for tomorrow.
Can we ask them questions? Has that ever happened at a Q&A?
I don't know if that's ever happened. We need a bit. Have you got a tip for tomorrow?
I want to ask that guy a question. Can I ask him a question? The front row there.
A guy in the hat with the T-shirt.
Have you ever placed a large bet?
Not massively, no. But I have placed a bet on the horses.
Did you win?
Thanks to my dad. Yeah, he gave me a tip.
See, it's all dads.
Yeah.
All dads.
Favourite 80s band?
He had inside knowledge. Yeah.
Favourite 80s band?
Sorry?
Favourite 80s band?
The Smiths.
That's a great band.
Smith.
Did you see Morrissey when he came out?
I missed him.
He toured in the about
90s. Yeah, he pulled out, didn't he? He lost his voice.
He pulled out in the 80s. I had tickets and he pulled out. Yeah,
coming here.
He toured here and he did 2 things. He went on Tonight Live with Steve Vizard and played Brisbane and went, I'm leaving the country. And so
because of Steve Vizard?
I don't know. He just cancelled.
It's either Dave O'Neill or Steve Vizard.
Yes.
Either way.
But he toured about 9 years ago and played the Forum. It was fantastic. He did a few Smith songs. And,
how long ago?
About 9 years ago. Yeah, it was about 9 years ago. Yeah.
Recent gig, was it?
Morrissey, yeah, but he was lead singer of the Smiths. Yeah, one of my friends supported him. I played in a band called the Anyones, and I said, "Oh wow, you supported Morrissey? Did you meet him?" He said, "Nah." He said Morrissey, because he'd been doing rock and roll, so he didn't turn up for the sound check. His band played the sound check, and he said the band started playing. This limo pulled up. A guy opened the side door. He got out of the limo, walked on stage, sang songs. Because I noticed this on the night. He stayed on stage for the encore, and then once the encore finished, he went, "See you later," and the band continued playing. He walked off stage, back in the limo, gone. Didn't
So he lived in a different universe to the rest of the band.
Yeah, he would employ the band.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
right.
He would employ the band. They would be his employees because he owns the band basically.
Right.
It's like Kiss. Gene Simmons now owns Kiss. You know what I mean? So he employs Paul Stanley when they go on the road.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. He goes, whether if I want to bring him on the road, I'll decide that. Kind of.
How did that happen?
I think Ace Frehley, Paul Stanley was on drugs, and Gene probably got him to sign things.
Took advantage of them.
Were the 80s bands less big here than in America, proportionally? Or were they more popular here or less?
Massively popular.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Which kind of band? Which bands?
Any of those 80s. Well, because my feeling about Australian society is that we have a thing about you don't want to get caught trying.
Well, those
80s bands were definitely trying. Like Kiss, they didn't just kind of rock out on stage and go, "Oh yeah, we wrote a couple of songs."
But that was a prevailing thing at the time. You never looked like you never could look like you were trying.
A lot of them didn't want to be
wearing makeup.
Yeah.
No, not Kiss, but no. I'm talking about particularly Melbourne bands in the 80s and everything. It was more important to be cool, enigmatic than to try.
Yeah, Nick Cave and the Birthday Party, they didn't want to be famous. No way, man. They just wanted to be cool. That's a thing. Whereas these days, I think people want to be famous, I'd say.
And make money. No one wanted to make money in those days either.
No.
Really?
No, that's the when they give it all away. Oh, hang on. I think that's what happens, yeah.
Any questions? Come on, someone else.
Oh, there's one up the back. There's one up the front. One up the
great.
back. Go up the back. Go up the back. Oh, here we go. There's one here. We'll go to it.
Dave, did you ever see Kids in the what was the band?
Kids in the Kitchen.
At the Ballroom in Fitzroy Street.
Stevie Ballroom, which is a George Hotel now. I went there. That was the first gig I went to underage. Me and a guy from high school caught the train. We got the tram down to St Kilda, and it was a great venue. And we went and saw the Go-Betweens. I can't remember who else was on.
The crossfire.
Yeah, and we I remember that because the cops turned up and we hid in the toilets, and then we walked out and you could see through a door the cops were in like the manager's room or in uniform drinking beer. It's like the good old days of St Kilda.
Why did you have to hide?
Because we were underage and we were scared.
Oh, it was a drinking venue.
Yeah, we were scared. We were in a drinking venue in the CV Ballroom. But yeah, the CV Ballroom was a great venue. It's fantastic. You used to go there, did you? Or?
I wanted to go and see.
Yeah, I saw In Excess there. I saw some great bands there. Terrific. You can have your wedding there now. So, the George.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all the same.
G'day. I was just wondering, is there a particular year of the 80s that you think released the best sound?
Oh, gee, that's a tough question.
For?
I reckon 84 was pretty good. I reckon early 80s was... Maybe because it was when I was at my peak. And I was still a virgin, but... I was thinking about that. I was a virgin. Anyway, I'm going to have to go into that, but...
Hang on, we do need to go into this. Were you thinking that you peaked before while you were a virgin?
Yeah, I was thinking, oh man,
it went down.
Like my wife's going, so why do you love the 80s so much? I said, because, I was single and I was at uni, and I went from that school to uni thing, and I was in a band and stuff. And she goes, when did you lose your virginity again? I went, oh yeah. It was 85 or 86. But I think the 81, 82, 83, because it had a bit more rawness and a bit more punkage to it. And then it got a little bit sort of...
Bit silly.
Bit flowery.
The late 80s were a bit tired.
The
early 80s waned on the late 80s.
Yeah, it was, it's like bands like In Excess were fantastic in the early... The Models were fantastic, These Australian bands were awesome. And then they all got a bit... a lot of 80s bands got shit, you know what I mean? Like Simple Minds, they were a great alternative band, and they just went, well, In Excess were fantastic for a long time.
Band.
Huh?
Unbelievable band.
Yeah, unbelievable. They were a great band live too.
Anyone else? Come on. Just make something up. Yeah.
Yeah, go on. Oh, here we go.
I've got one of your old singles from 1988. I didn't get it signed, yeah. Maybe you can sign it
Can we
now.
play it?
Oh, we can't.
Can't we play it? Is there a way to play it?
I don't reckon there's a way.
Oh, mate,
what
please.
song?
Show them the Paul Weller dress-up doll.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. That's Yeah, there we go. Captain Coco. Yeah, wow. That's my band. Yeah.
That's great.
That's it's worth a lot of money, buddy. That's I think about 100 of those
I
at
can't
home.
believe I needed you to encourage. I need to encourage you to actually say that.
That's
Show them the dress-up doll, the Paul Weller
there's a
dress-up
Paul
doll.
Weller dress-up doll in there. Yeah. See, this is the thing that we were a humorous sort of band, and that's where
good packaging and everything, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the girl that Sass did that. That's Paul Weller from the Jam and Style Council. I don't know why we called the song Paul Weller, because we don't even talk about him in the song. We thought it was a bit of an in-joke. But this was produced by David Briggs, who was the third guitarist in Little River Band. And I see his studio still up here near Vic Market. And so we were quite young and naive in these days. I would have been 19, 20. And we would go to his studio. You know, we lived in Mitcham. We'd go to his studio and he'd go, yeah, I don't know what to do in this bit. I'm just going to go upstairs and make some international phone calls. And then I'll come back down and you'd smell this strange smell. And he was having a joint, obviously. And then he'd come back down, yeah, okay, guys, I'm into it. Okay, what we're going to do? We're going to do this. We're going to do that.
Did he mean that as a metaphor?
Yeah, I don't know. You're going to make some...
Or
He said, I can still remember, we're going to make some international phone calls. So then he'd come back and go, yeah, a key change would be great here, and we'll do this here, and we'll do that there, and, you know. But our band, we were pretty shit house, actually, really. We were...
Hey, please. Big fan sitting here.
We went on... This is a good song, though. This was written by... Mark Murphy, who went on to form a great 90s band called Ripe. And,
Carlton football.
Yeah, Mark Murphy.
He's now playing for Carlton.
Different Mark Murphy. But we actually went on the Factory, which was was an ABC early morning music show, like Recovery, and it was that tradition. And this one was hosted by Andrew Daddo and Alex Paps. And yeah, good times.
That wasn't a joke, was it?
The Factory, man. And Tanya Lacey was on it too, I think. Anyway, just before Andrew Daddo interviewed my brother and I, he said to me, and remember, mate, I do the funny stuff around here. And well, whatever.
Who does now?
Yeah, look at him now.
Showdown.
This lady here.
Be on the bank.
Hi, Dave, you don't seem to like the idea of gambling, but don't you think choosing a career as a comedian is a big gamble?
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Very good question.
Life's a gamble, as the Radiators once said. You're right, it is a gamble, but when you get to my era, I'm 47 now, it's not much of a gamble, really. I mean, some of the situations I walk into, it's a gamble, that's for sure. It is a gamble, but you take the gamble when you're young. So I was 24 when I started out in comedy, and you had no ambitions. You didn't do it for money. You just did it for fun.
But do you feel like when you go out to do a gig, there's winning and losing?
There is winning and losing. Yeah. You're right. But I try and
killing and dying. I think
they call it dying when you die on stage.
Killing is good and dying's bad.
Yeah. But I try to limit the situations where I can die, because when you start out, they go someone rings up and goes, we've got a gig at Melton TAFE at lunchtime. Oh yeah, I'll do that. Now they ring up now, I go, no, I'll be right. I don't want to go to Melton TAFE at lunchtime and perform to mainly overseas students who, just going, who's this fat guy? Ruining my lunch.
Who's the fat lesbian?
Which has happened. You go to some gigs and you're just ruining people's night. So, I try and limit those experiences after 23 or 4 years in comedy.
Do you have an opening line ready to go?
Always? Oh, yeah, of course.
Oh, mate.
Always.
Yeah,
I've had several over the years.
Comedy jukebox.
When I was younger, I used to always say,
jukebox.
I used to say, thanks for coming to my 21st. That doesn't really work now.
You do the lesbian now.
Oh, yeah, I say, I know what you're thinking. I know you're looking at me, I know what you're thinking, not another lesbian comedian. That's my current opener, because I look a bit like a lesbian.
Based on the response, do you then have a way to go?
Yes, yeah, you do.
Because if the lesbian one falls flat...
Well, the lesbian one works mainly...
Lesbian but if it did, you don't want to follow up with...
I do have another one, don't worry. I say, I did 2 footy clubs today, and I don't bother doing the lesbian one there, because they think blokes in their 30s, 40s and 50s in, where was I, Watsonia, they don't think lesbians look like this. They think lesbians look like what they look like on their DVDs. Whereas an astute sort of ABC-ish crowd know that lesbians look like this. So if you do the inner city, you go, I look like a lesbian, everyone goes, oh, yeah, good one. But then the burbs are like, what's he talking about? But then I actually say there was a mix up with the hairdresser. I said I wanted like Wu-Tang Clan. She thought I said KD Lang, so here I am. So they get that. But my other opening line is I say to guys, especially who freaks them out, I go, "Oh, g'day guys. Oh, sorry, there's been a mix up. I'm the stripper, so let's get into it." And that's like, bloke's like, "Oh, what's going on? What?"
What a question down here. Sorry, mate.
But you read a crowd too. You walk in and go, well, I'm not, all blokes. You can go pretty, hard.
So you feel it's less of a gamble now?
It's less of a gamble. That's the answer to the question. Less of a gamble. I mean, I did teaching. I stayed a bit teacher. I reckon that'd be tough.
That's tough.
Yeah, that's tough.
Tough.
I wouldn't want to do that.
Down the back.
I've been told this is the last question. Sorry to kill off the conversation. Dave, have you ever been in a situation where you've had to consider whether to leave well enough alone? For instance, you've got a band that left you with really good memories, 20, 25 years ago, and then, all of a sudden, and I won't mention names, but 1927 decides to tour with them this year, and you feel tempted to go?
Yes, I'm with you. I went and saw I was working with Dicko and on radio, another great period of my life. No, he's not a bad guy. Anyway, what I'm talking. Anyway, the lead singer of Spandau Ballet was coming out with where do I lay my hat?
Gary Kemp.
Hadley.
Paul Young. Yeah, Gary Kemp was in Spandau Ballet. He wasn't talking to the lead singer of Spandau Ballet. I can't remember his name. Anyway.
Tony Hadley.
And so I'm saying, Dicko, we got to go to this. This is going to be great. Tony Hadley and Paul Young was sort of like girls' music when we were growing up. But, we'd put up with Paul Young. He had a few good songs, Living in the Land of the Common People. And I loved Spandau Ballet. And Spandau Ballet had not toured at that stage. They toured in the 80s and I saw them then. And they were great until they took their shirts off at the end and hugged. It was weird, but whatever. They were our heroes and they're like, what's going on? Anyway, so we thought we'll go to it was at Crown Casino. Warning. There's your first at Palms on Crown, and we're genuinely. And Dicko had this idea where we give away tickets to 2 listeners to go with us. So these 2 women. Oh man. Anyway. And the girl that was assigned, she's going, I don't even know who this band, I don't even know who Tony Hadley is. She was, whatever. Anyway, I'm excited because Tony Hadley's coming on. And they came on, and the first song they sang was, anyway, great to be here. Everyone's cheering. Oh, it's Tony Hadley. They sang Boys of Summer, which was an Eagles, Don Henley song. And we're like, what the hell? Spandau Ballet were cutting new wave band in this very late 70s, early 80s. They started to react to bands like that, and he's up there singing an Eagles song. You're like, what the hell? And then Paul Young tried to sing a song, and he couldn't sing. He was like, wherever I lay. His voice was shot. It was gone. And he kept going, this is the time. Mate, I can't. You're like, mate, no, your voice is shit, mate. You can't. You couldn't even do that. So, but that was, you're right. You go along to some of these gigs and you go, I should have stayed at home and listened to the records. Yeah. Because there's a massive industry now with 80s Reformation, you know what I mean? There's massive industry, but that was a very disappointing experience, I've got to say.
They're touring Spandau Ballet.
Yeah, I would love to see.
I met Gary Kemp in London at a restaurant.
He's an actor, isn't he?
Yeah, I met him in a restaurant, and when I was a kid, I always thought that song, the lyric was, you are Johan.
Oh, you are gold.
Yeah, I always thought it was you are Johan. It was talking about a person named Johan. And so it was deadly serious. And I met Gary Kemp, and then his friend said, Gary was in Spandau Ballet. And I was like, oh, Johan? And he was like, no, what? Gary. And I was like, what? And he's like, is Johan Gary in Australian? And I was like, no, the song, you are Johan. Honestly, it was only one of the strangest looks I've ever seen. He looked at me like I was a complete madman.
Well, he would have heard everything.
Yeah, he hadn't heard that. He had not heard Johan.
Misheard lyrics are wonderful, aren't they? No,
it sounds like a superhero, though. You've got the power to know. You're indestructible. You're Johan.
You're indestructible.
Yeah. Always believing you are Johan.
Yeah, I still can't see it.
No, listen to it, iTunes, and you'll be like, oh, yeah, it does kind of sound like Johan.
I had a mate who thought Paperback Rider was I'm a bike rider. and then there was another thing, pay the black writer.
A civil rights kind of movement song.
Civil rights.
Come on, pay the black writer.
I remember that Triple J song. He took me to a gay bar. I thought it was he took me to a Kmart. I'm thinking, what's the big deal? He took me to a Kmart. Run down the street.
With the short voice thing, I went to Stuttgart with AC/DC. This is one of my last gigs in journalism. I got to go and interview AC/DC, and the big thing was that Brian Johnson's voice was shot, and someone gave him the night before. I think it was 24 hours before he had to play, and someone gave him this pill. It was called Singer's Secret. All right, and I said, I was worried. How's the Singer's Secret going, Brian? He goes, well, it's done nothing for my voice, but you should see the size of my cock.
Oh, God. Viagra.
And it's true, though. He had a
bad voice. Did you interview
cock.
Angus or Malcolm?
But, not because I saw him. I actually did see him with the towel.
Oh my God!
Displayed, showing these women, and they were going, "Dizzy, right?" It's full on. Look at the lesbian looking at me. She's not interested.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Guys, thank you so much to Kick Gurry and Dave O'Neill. I think it's been a wonderful night. I'm so glad these two guys were able to make it. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what to do. Sam Pang, I don't know where you are, but watch the video.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy.
That's how you do it, Sam.
Yeah, that's right.
Poor Sam. Where is he? Olympics?
Sunning himself in New Zealand.
Oh, is there sun there?
I don't... Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Round of applause for Adam Zwar. Doing a great job.
Thanks, guys. Awesome, mate.